Top 5. Acheloüs tells the stories of the 5 Naiads. Meanwhile, Theseus, having completed his part of the joint task, was on his way to the Erechtheian towers of Tritonus, swollen with rains, blocked his path, and caused him delay. "Come," said Acheloüs, "renowned Cecropian, seek shelter under my roof, and do not risk crossing the swift floods. They can carry away strong beams and roll down stones with immense roaring. I have seen high folds and flocks swept away from my banks, and strength and swiftness offer no protection. Many young men have been overwhelmed by this torrent when mountain snows melt. It's safer to rest until the river returns to its usual bounds, and its channel contains the flowing waters." Theseus agreed to this and replied, "I will accept your hospitality and heed your advice, Acheloüs." He entered a dwelling made of pumice stone with many holes, and the sandstone was far from smooth. The floor was moist with soft moss, and shells adorned the roof in alternating rows. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Theseus and his companions lay down on couches, Ixion's son on one side and Lelex, the hero of Trozen, on the other, his temples now graced with thin gray hairs. Alongside them were others whom the river of the Acarnanians had honored with similar hospitality. Barefoot nymphs then served a banquet, and after the feast, wine was served in gem-adorned bowls. Gazing out at the seas below, Theseus inquired, "What place is this?" and pointed with his finger. "And what is the name of that island, though it seems to be more than one?" Acheloüs replied, "Indeed, it is not one object we see. There lie 5 countries, deceiving us with their distance." And to lessen your surprise at the deeds of the disregarded Artemis, those were Naiads who, after sacrificing twice 5 bullocks and inviting the local gods to a feast, held a joyous festival, ignoring me. Enraged, I swelled to my fullest and tore away woods and fields, hurling the nymphs into the sea. Only then did they remember me. My waves, along with those of the sea, divided the once continuous land into as many parts as you see islands, called the Naiads, amidst the waves.
"But as you can see from afar," continued Acheloüs, "there is one island, see? It was separated far off from the rest, an island dear to me. Sailors call it Perimele. This beloved nymph I deprived of her virginity. Her father, Hippodamus, took offense and cast his daughter, about to give birth, from a rock into the sea. I received her, and supporting her as she swam, I said, 'O trident-bearer, who holds dominion next to the heavens over the realms of flowing waters, where we sacred rivers converge and flow. Come here, Poseidon, and listen graciously to my plea. I have wronged this woman I support. If her father, Hippodamus, had been gentle and just, or less cruel, he would have pitied her and forgiven me. Lend your aid. Grant her a place, Poseidon, I implore you, cast into the waters by her father's cruelty, or allow her to become a place herself. Even so, I will embrace her.' The Ocean King nodded his head, causing the waters to tremble in agreement. The nymph was afraid, yet she swam. As she swam, I touched her breast, pulsating with a trembling motion, and as I touched it, her entire body hardened, and earth covered her breast. While I spoke, fresh earth enveloped her floating limbs, and a heavy island formed from her transformed body.
6. Dionysus and Philemon, the transformations of Proteus. After these events, the river fell silent, leaving them all astonished by the wondrous deed. The son of Ixion laughed at them, finding the story unbelievable. Being a despiser of the gods and possessing a haughty disposition, he remarked, "Acheloüs, you tell tall tales and overestimate the power of the gods, if you believe they can both give and take away the forms of things." His words amazed everyone, and Lelex, wise in both understanding and age, spoke up, "The power of heaven is immense and boundless. Whatever the gods will, it is done." To further convince you of this, there is an oak on the Phrygian hills near the lime tree, enclosed by a low wall. I have seen the spot myself. Pythias sent me to the land of Pelops, once ruled by his father, Pelops. Not far from there is standing water, once habitable ground, but now frequented by cormorants and coots that delight in swamps. Zeus came here in the guise of a man, accompanied by Hermes, the grandson of Atlas and bearer of the Caduceus, who had set aside his wings. They visited 1,000 houses seeking lodging and rest, but 1,000 houses barred their doors against them. Only one small thatched cottage, made of straw and marsh reeds, welcomed them in. an elderly couple, Baucis and Philemon, united in their youth in that humble dwelling, grew old together. By accepting their poverty, they made it bearable, living without discontent. Whether you asked for the masters or the servants, the whole household comprised just the two of them, both obeying and commanding. When the heavenly visitors reached this humble abode and bowed their heads to enter the door, the old man offered them a bench to rest on, which Baucis covered with a coarse cloth. She then tended to the warm embers on the hearth, stirring up the fire from the previous day with leaves and dry bark, and kindling it into flame with her aged breath. Fetching split faggots and dry branches from the house, she placed them beneath a small pot. She also stripped pot herbs her husband had gathered from the well-watered garden of their leaves. With a two-pronged fork, Philemon lifted down a rusty side of bacon hanging from a black beam, cutting off a small portion from the chine that had been preserved for so long and softening it in boiling water. As they passed the time with conversation, they did not notice its length. A beechen trough hung on a peg by its crooked handle, filled with warm water for refreshing their limbs. On the middle of the couch, made of willow, was placed a cushion of soft sedge, covered with coarse old cloths, typically reserved for festive occasions, but suitable for a willow couch. The gods seated themselves as the old woman, wearing an apron and trembling with palsy, set the table before them. However, the third leg of the table was too short, so a potsherd placed beneath it made it even. Green mint was then used to rub down the table, now leveled by the potsherd. On the table were double-tinted berries of Athena, cornel berries preserved in thin pickle, endive, radishes, a large piece of curdled milk, and eggs gently turned in the slow embers, all served in earthenware. An embossed goblet of similar clay was placed there, along with cups made of varnished beech wood lined with yellow wax. After a short pause, the warm meal was brought forth from the fire, and wine, not kept for long, was served again before making way for the second course. This included nuts, dried figs mixed with wrinkled dates, plums, fragrant apples in wide baskets, and grapes from the purple vines, with white honeycomb in the middle. Above all, there were welcoming looks and no lack of generosity. Whenever Baucis and the alarmed Philemon saw the goblet replenishing itself and the wine increasing on its own after being drunk, they were astonished and frightened, raising their hands in prayer and seeking forgiveness for their humble entertainment and lack of preparation. They had planned to kill a single goose, the guardian of their little cottage, for their divine guests. However, the goose proved elusive, evading them with its swift wings until it seemed to seek refuge with the gods themselves. The immortals forbade its slaughter and declared that the impious neighborhood would face deserved punishment. They granted Philemon and Baucis exemption from this calamity, instructing them to leave their home and accompany them to the summit of the mountain. They both obeyed, and supported by staffs, they attempted to reach the top of the high hill. They were now as far from the top as an arrow can travel in one shot when they turned their eyes and saw the other parts sinking into a morass, with their own home alone remaining. While they marveled at these things and mourned the fate of their fellow countrymen, their humble cottage, too small even for two owners, transformed into a temple. Columns replaced forked stakes, the thatch turned yellow, and the earth was covered with marble. Carved doors and a roof of gold appeared. Then the son of Saturn spoke with benevolent lips. "Tell us, good old man, and you, wife, worthy of such a good husband, what it is you desire." After speaking a few words to Baucis, Philemon expressed their joint request to the gods. "We wish to be your priests and to care for your temple. And since we have lived our years in harmony, let the same hour take us both together. Let me never see the tomb of my wife, nor be destined to be buried by her." Their wishes were granted. They became the keepers of the temple until the end of their lives. When, weakened by years and old age, they stood by chance before the sacred steps, recounting the fortunes of the spot, Baucis saw Philemon, and the aged Philemon saw Baucis turning into leaf. As the tops of the trees grew above their two faces, they exchanged words with each other as long as they could, saying together, "Farewell, my spouse, and at that moment the branches covered their concealed faces. The inhabitants of Tyana still show these adjoining trees made of their two bodies. Old men, not storytellers, and there was no reason for them to deceive me, told me this. Indeed, I saw garlands hanging on the branches, and placing some fresh ones there myself, I said, "The good are the special care of the gods, and those who worship the gods are now worshipped themselves." He had finished, and the story itself and the storyteller had astonished them all, especially Theseus. Leaning on his elbow, the Caledonian River addressed Theseus, desiring to hear about the wonderful actions of the gods. "There are, O most valiant hero, some things whose form has been changed once and then remained under that change. Some have the privilege to pass into many shapes, like you, Proteus, inhabitant of the sea that embraces the earth. People have seen you as a young man, then as a lion, at times a furious boar, or a serpent they dreaded to touch. Sometimes horns made you a bull, other times you appeared as a stone or a tree. Sometimes you imitated flowing water, becoming a river, and other times fire, the very opposite of water.